But before we're going to check it out, the software itself, we're doing a quick unboxing what we're going to see inside of here. Because we do have the Type-C connection nowadays, so that's kind of cool. It comes even including an HDMI. This is a normal HDMI to a mini HDMI because it even has TV out functionality. And a quick toilet paper manual, the glossy paper deluxe version. The overall layout, it's the same stuff that we have seen many times before with two freaking analog joysticks, even including a click. What is interesting that both of them will have different kind of rubber or patterns, and then it's also kind of interesting that we have two different joysticks. But if you just need to move around, and this isn't a very nice, pleasant experience, but this is my opinion not the best when it comes to fighting games. But if you just want to play a game like Contra, it's not going to be the perfect experience in my opinion. So first of all, is that, navigating through the game, it is possible in my opinion. At the right side, we're going to get ourselves the A, B, X, Y button, and they do have a very short, very nice travel. When it comes to the form factor of the buttons, they are very pleasant and they are very comfortable. While I personally hate these small buttons, this is not bad at all. But on top, we do have the option to add ourselves an SD card, the HDMI out, we're having a micro USB, then we're having a Type-C connection, volume control with a physical button and the on-off switch that you need to hold a couple of seconds for booting up the device. And on the bottom, we're not going to get anything. There is no jack out when it comes to the headphone jack. So yeah, that's a little bit of a bummer because I know a lot of people love to have that option. I already noticed with this unboxing that there are quite some, let's say, overall like quality issues. But finally, we do have a stereo configuration at the back. But I was quite disappointed with the, let's say, loudness of the two speakers. Another problem is if you're just going to be holding your hand, you're going to be covering up sometimes the speaker so that it even lowers the volume. But when it comes to the overall quality, I'm quite surprised by it. But let's take a close look at the specification list. The display is in 4.3 inches with a resolution of 800 by 480. The CPU is an ATM 7501 quad core that has a RAM of 2 GB DDR3. Internal memory is 8 GB, but you can expand it to a maximum of 128 GB. Battery life is 2500 mAh and will give you around 5 hours of gaming time. So we do have like a wide range of different support, but one of the cool features they implement nowadays is finally stereo speakers. Because this thing is more like a multimedia device, think about your PlayStation Portable. So what I do find very pleasant that we're having over here the Game Boy Advance, Super Famicom, the arcade stuff, Mega Drive, Game Boy Classic, PlayStation 1 and just the games. We do have different pages, so first of all having the main page, then we're going to make the same overall, like say, shenanigans when it comes to these tiny thumbnails, because you can't change them out, you cannot do anything about them. If your file gets corrupted or is a problem, there is nothing you can do. Another feature we need to discuss is the search function. We have the option to search now. That was a feature we didn't have before. Then of course we can make a quick load and quick save. So I'll give you an example. So here we're having the option to make a progress save. Unfortunately, it's not really a way to find out what or where you were. Some of the devices do have this. So if you're having an SD card, we have a maximum 128 GB you can use. You need to format it on FAT32 or FATX if I'm saying it correctly. You're going to be plugging it in, and when plugging in, you have the notification card is going to be in. Oh, there we go. And automatically it will be added to the system. Let's move into a different game, and oh man, the frames per second are really horrible in this particular game. You can just see how stuttering it is. But next up, let's take a close look at some NES, and where the emulation is quite nice. I do have a feeling there is a little bit of an input delay, and with the D-pad if you want to. But I find also interesting that we can actually use the right joystick for just shooting. Also here we have no problems whatsoever. No problems with it, and also no screen tearing so far I can see. Of course I wanted to play a short part of the Metal Slug games. But the emulation from the MAME is pretty damn awful, where we do have great emulation performance when it comes to Neo Geo. But let's get into some Sega Genesis or Mega Drive. Alright, the sound effect seems to be working just fine. Because this is in general problem with these cheaper emulation devices. That is something they always seem to be messing up. Okay, so let's place our bid in the game. This is such a fun experience that you needed to bid against the other players, or the CPUs in this case. But you can just hear with the audio also there, it goes absolutely in a very bad emulation with frames drops. But getting into the game, we do have an okay, pleasant experience. The unfortunate part is when it comes to the aspect ratio, that doesn't work with PlayStation 1. It's completely like messed up. So the next thing that we need to do first is getting the aspect ratio all the way up to the full screen. Otherwise the game is completely unplayable. Although to the point when it comes to the aspect ratio. So putting it up, at first I was quite surprised that this seems to be running just fine. And the reason I'm surprised, because the chipset they're using inside this device has a lot of problems when it comes to PlayStation 1. But getting actually into the game, there we're noticing the most big problems. Stuttering and slowdowns to the maximum level. And it's a little bit of a bummer because PlayStation 1 on this Project X is absolutely a cool addition. Yeah, nevertheless there are a lot of different devices nowadays from Powkiddy and Anbernic that can play PlayStation 1 without any problem. Of course, for the money we're paying for in Project X from China, this is absolutely a very cheap device. And the overall performance, surprisingly, it's not better than all the other cheap ones that we have tried before. It's a bummer. They should spend more time on it to get this thing at least working properly. But where that really the biggest surprise of the device is actually the TV out function. That works plug and play without any problem, and the signal output is very good. In the beginning it did show the game in the console itself, but I think it's now a very cool idea. You can just actually play the game and see it working just fine. Alright, so everything has been removed. And the first thing I'm already noticing is that everything has been soldered together. Where with some of the cheaper devices nowadays we can just unplug ourselves the speakers. Hey, but I've been complaining a lot about the speakers, and I mean that we only having one of them, and actually we do have indeed two of them in the inside, and this confirms it. So that's absolutely great in my opinion. I need to be very careful. These wires are very thin, and if you're going to be pulling it in the wrong direction, you will rip the cable itself, and mostly of the time it's going to be from the speaker. So the downside I find is that the contacts are being very close together, and another thing is that there's also a bummer that they didn't use the plug, so if you need to remove it you need to do some soldering. So with the soldering part you need to be very careful, of course. So the soldering overall has been done quite nice, but I'm always not a big fan of these things. And the next part we're just going to be removing the last 4 screws, and then we can lift up the other part. The ribbon cable can be removed. And of course we can replace and upgrade the display, or upgrade, let's put it replacing. But that is of course not necessary. We do have a very nice one. So when it comes to the chip, here we're going to get ourselves the ATM 7051H. And that is the same stuff that we have seen before when it comes to the cheaper devices of the X series. But it is one huge PCB that they constructed for this piece of equipment. Nevertheless, it's a very interesting, cool way how they made this particular product. And then we're going to get ourselves the micro switches underneath. If you need to do a replacement, oh man, there's a lot of parts you need to do desoldering. But I just want to give you a quick look in the inside of the Project X.